Religion has been a cornerstone of human civilization since ancient times. Across cultures and continents, it has provided meaning, purpose, and community. In Africa, too, religion shaped society at every level, from the sacred groves of traditional belief systems to the cathedrals of Christianity and the mosques of Islam. Once Christianity and Islam gained strongholds in African regions, many African societies became just as pious and devout as their co-religionists in Europe or the Middle East. They embraced these Abrahamic religions with sincerity and zeal. Yet, when it came to the higher ideal of religious brotherhood, a painful disconnect often emerged. In theory, the concept of a unified global Ummah or Christian fellowship should have ensured mutual respect, cooperation, and solidarity. In practice, however, African states frequently found themselves betrayed, subjugated, or exploited by those who claimed to share their faith. This analysis explores how the lofty promise of religious fraternity collapsed during two defining moments in African history: the 1591 Moroccan invasion of the Songhai Empire and the Portuguese Congo relationship from the 15th to 17th centuries. But first, a reminder. This video is not an attack on Christianity or Islam. Both religions have had profound and complex impacts on the continent, both enlightening and destructive. The problem lies not in the teachings of the faiths themselves, but in how they were weaponized by empires that claimed to represent them. Let us now turn to the historical record. Part 1. Islam and the Songhai Empire, Brotherhood or Betrayal. Islam first entered West Africa through the trans-Saharan trade routes by the 8th century. It was not spread by conquest, but through commerce, education, and scholarship. Merchants and scholars brought not only goods but also ideas, and cities like Timbuktu, Gao, and Jen became centers of Islamic learning. The Songhai Empire, ruling over parts of modern-day Mali, Niger, and Nigeria, rose as a powerful Islamic state, with Timbuktu revered as a beacon of knowledge. One of its most iconic scholars was Ahmed Baba, a brilliant jurist and theologian whose works were respected even beyond Africa. But in 1591, this illustrious empire faced a devastating betrayal from another Muslim power, the Moroccan invasion. Sultan Ahmad al-Mansur of Morocco launched a military campaign against Songhai under the guise of unifying the Islamic world. But the true motive was economic. Morocco coveted control over the lucrative trans-Saharan gold trade and access to enslaved labor from the interior. Armed with firearms and cannons, a military technology unknown in Songhai, the Moroccan forces crushed the West African defenders. What made the invasion especially painful was that it was done in the name of Islamic unity. On the battlefield, Songhai soldiers are reported to have cried out, "We are Muslims. We are your brothers in faith." But their pleas were ignored. The swords of the Moroccan army fell without mercy. The most respected scholar of the time, Ahmed Baba, personally confronted the Sultan of Morocco. He asked, "Why attack a fellow Muslim nation?" The Sultan reportedly replied, "For the unity of the Islamic lands." But unity, it seemed, was just another word for conquest, the racial and cultural undercurrent. To understand this betrayal more fully, we must look at cultural dynamics in North Africa. Over centuries, many Amazigh, Berber, rulers and elites in Morocco converted to Islam and gradually adopted an Arab identity, a phenomenon some scholars describe as genealogical determinism. This concept prioritized Arab lineage and downplayed or even stigmatized black African ancestry, even among fellow Muslims. Despite Islam's egalitarian message, Moroccan society often placed Arab identity at the top of a racial and cultural hierarchy. In fact, many Moroccan rulers were the sons of black African concubines, yet they styled themselves as sharifs, descendants of the Prophet Muhammad, and distanced themselves from their sub-Saharan kin. This racialized view contributed to the idea that West African Muslims were not equals but inferior subjects, a mindset that helped justify Morocco's brutal invasion of Songhai. Islam, which had been introduced centuries earlier by pious scholars, was now being wielded as a sword by imperial powers. Part 2. Christian. Moving to Central Africa, a similar story of faith and betrayal unfolded in the Kongo Kingdom. Christianity first arrived in the late 15th century, when Portuguese missionaries and traders reached the region. King Nzinga Nkuwu, later baptized as João I, was the first to convert. But it was his son, Nzinga Mbemba, King Afonso I, who fully embraced Christianity and sought to build a Christian nation modeled after European ideals. Afonso I wrote fluent Portuguese, established churches and schools, and sent noble youths to Europe to study theology and diplomacy. His son, Enrique, was even consecrated as a Catholic bishop, a remarkable achievement for an African state. King Afonso saw Portugal not as a colonizer, but as a brotherly Christian ally. He exchanged letters with the Portuguese monarchs, often invoking their shared faith and expressing admiration and trust. But Portugal's vision of Christian brotherhood was quite different. Exploitation behind the cross. As the transatlantic slave trade grew, Portuguese traders began kidnapping Congo's people, even members of the nobility, and shipping them to the Americas. Afonso protested vehemently in his letters. Each day the traders are kidnapping our people, sons of this country, sons of our nobles and vassals. This corruption and depravity are so widespread that our land is entirely depopulated. Yet his pleas were ignored. Portuguese letters to Congo, once polite and respectful, became patronizing and paternalistic. Portuguese kings referred to Afonso as a subordinate, using second-person pronouns while referring to themselves in the royal we. What began as religious fraternity transformed into racial hierarchy and economic exploitation. Cultural transformation and conflict. King Afonso tried to merge Congo's indigenous culture with Christian ideals, but this effort eventually backfired. He destroyed traditional religious symbols, labeled them as idols, and replaced them with imported Christian artifacts. The Congo elite took on European names, dress, and customs. But even total religious devotion could not protect them from the colonial ambitions of their so-called Christian allies. Part 3. The Mirage of Brotherhood. Both the Moroccan invasion of Songhai and the Portuguese betrayal of Congo reveal a harsh truth. Religious brotherhood was conditional, often a mirage, easily sacrificed on the altar of power and profit. Whether it was Islam in West Africa or Christianity in Central Africa, the shared belief in a spiritual fraternity failed to prevent conquest, racism, and economic exploitation. To the African faithful, like Ahmed Baba or King Afonso, religion was sacred. To foreign powers it was often a means to an end. The difference in approach is critical. These examples also highlight a broader pattern. African rulers placed trust in the moral ideals of the religions they adopted, believing that shared faith meant shared humanity. Unfortunately, this trust was not always returned. Conclusion: faith as a double-edged sword. The history of religion in Africa is rich and complex. Christianity and Islam brought new art, architecture, literacy, and philosophical thought. But they also brought division, hierarchy, and conquest, especially when wielded by foreign empires with imperial aims. The dream of a unified religious brotherhood, whether Christian or Muslim, was a powerful ideal. But when tested by the realpolitik of empire, it often crumbled. As we reflect on these histories, let us remember, the problem was not the faiths themselves but how they were used. Africa embraced these religions in good faith, but too often that faith was exploited. Final note: this video is based on historical interpretations, not moral judgments. It is an attempt to understand how ideas, sacred and noble, can be bent by ambition and greed. If this history moved you or sparked your curiosity, consider supporting this channel. Your help allows us to keep telling the untold stories of Africa, its faiths, its empires, and its enduring quest for justice and dignity. Peace to you and to our ancestors.